So while we're sort of still adding people, I thought maybe I'll kick off with an introduction. So just want to say, hi everybody, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us. We have an esteemed panel, a wonderful panel, and I can't wait to hear from them. I'm going to let you know who they are in a moment. But today we organised this International Women's Day event in partnership with Hope Not Hate, and we have Gemma Levine, the Deputy Director from Hope Not Hate, joining us, and she's going to be speaking as well. So why, as the Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group, or the independent members of the Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group, did we decide to host an event on International Women's Day? Well, first of all, you know, in a way, it's unfortunate that we still have to have a special day in which we recognise women and their contributions and their achievements and celebrate them, but also recognise, you know, the enormous amounts of barriers that women deal with. And we felt, you know, we wanted to really use the opportunity this year to celebrate Muslim women. So the theme for International Women's Day this year was Choose to Challenge, and we thought we're going to choose to challenge the status quo of gender inequality by celebrating women, and in particular Muslim women, because all too often, as I'm sure so many of you know, Muslim women are spoken about. They're usually spoken about in terms of, you know, problems, either being oppressed or, you know, some sort of, you know, issue that they need saving from. And we thought we'd just love to be able to speak about Muslim women in, you know, in much positive terms, and also celebrate the enormous work that Muslim women are doing. And we are really, really lucky to be joined by a very special panel of different Muslim women, and Gemma as well is joining us to support us in this celebration. So before I announce the sort of bios of the speakers, just to kind of mention a little bit more about the Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group. So I chair the independent members of a government working group, which is called the Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group, and collectively we work with government to consider and take forward proposals to tackle issues of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim hatred in the UK. The group was set up in 2012, and as independent members, we're made up from representatives from the Muslim communities, independent experts and academics, and we're situated all around the country, and we also have representation from the Sikh community as well. So without further ado, let me tell you who we are being joined on this esteemed panel by. So one of our first speakers is going to be Rahima Mahmood. Rahima is a Ouija singer. She's a human rights activist and translator. Currently, she is the UK project director of the World Ouija Congress and advisor to the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. Thank you so much, Rahima, for joining us. We'll also be joined by Gemma Levine. As I mentioned, Gemma Levine is Deputy Director at Hope Not Hate, a charity and campaigning group which researches and challenges hatred and extremism within local communities. I'm sure most of you have heard of Hope Not Hate. We are going to be also joined by Julie Siddiqui. Julie Siddiqui is a mentor, a consultant and gender equality campaigner with a specific focus on Jewish, Muslim and other interfaith relations. And she applies all of that to social action to bring communities to work together. Safa, we're also going to be joined by Safa Mahmood. Safa Mahmood is a young British Pakistani Muslim. She's an A-level student, currently studying sociology, psychology and English language. Wow, those are really difficult A-levels, Safa. She's also interested in becoming a solicitor and has a passion for social sciences and proactively conducts research in social issues. Safa, you sound like you're doing way more than I ever did at that age. And lastly, but not least, we will be joined by Sarah Khan Bashir. Sarah Khan Bashir is a family lawyer and the founder of top 3 best rated firm SKB Law. She has over 20 years legal experience, and her mission is to improve access to law for everybody. So thank you so much. I'm sure you agree we have a wonderful and before I sort of kick off, just to say, if you could all, you know, please feel free to introduce yourselves on the chat box, and feel free to share thoughts in the chat box as well. We're really hoping for a conversation, and you know, and a sort of informal kind of panel in keeping with, you know, a celebratory and positive tone, basically, for our event, celebrating Muslim women. And also,
Akila, can I
yes,
just say that I think there's interference with your mic or something.
Is it on the, with this?
I'm telling you as your friend.
Hijab.
So that
No, I'm glad you told me.
Find out afterwards. I don't know what it is, but when you move, something rustling and stuff like that. It feels like it's when you move papers or something on the desk, but sorry, I thought I'd just let you know.
No, thank you. Thanks so much. Is this better?
It is, but I mean, I don't know. Has anyone got any? It seems okay, I think.
No. Let me know if it sort of starts interfering again.
Yeah.
I think as long as it doesn't go into your, like, touch your clothes and that little rustling noise. But other than that, if it's not with any material close by, it should be okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully it will be okay. I've adjusted my headscarf, so hopefully it's okay. Okay, so I've lost my train of thought a little bit, but as I was saying, please feel free to, write messages in the chat box and, potentially network with each other. And we'll also be putting messages in chat box as well. And, before I forget, I also wanted to introduce Williams, who works as the support and development officer to the independent members of the Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group. She's based with Hope Not Hate. And she's the one that's sort of typing the messages and things in the chat box and has done really well to organize today's event. Rahima, if I could come to you, please. Now, today is a celebration about Muslim women, today's event, but I'm very conscious that you are at the forefront, actually, of dealing with the challenges that Muslim women can face in Uyghur, in China, and I'm sure many of us have heard about the atrocities that are taking place against the Uyghurs. But for those who don't know about what is happening in the occupied East Turkestan in China, could you briefly outline what the situation is and how it affects Uyghur communities? And if you could please also just tell us a little bit about how you got into activism and how we can support the work that you do.
Thank you very much. And it's really honor for me to be among such distinguished speakers. And I'd love to be on the same panel with Julie. We've been together for several panels. She is such an inspiring person. Well, the situation in my country in my own language, it is called Uyghur. But most people say Uyghur, but not Uyghur, not Uyghur. It's Uyghur or Uyghur.
I will try to remember that. I'm sorry for my mispronunciation.
No, I'm not criticizing, just I believe one of the reasons why people still don't know about Uyghurs when I say I'm Uyghur, because I believe even the pronunciation is so difficult. Is so difficult for people. At the moment, 3 million, up to 3 million Uyghurs are in the vast internment camps. About 1 million children taken away from homes. Most of these children, their family, their parents already in camps, so they're taken to state-run orphanages. It's similar to children's camps. They are not allowed to have other extended family members to visit them because Chinese government want to completely re-engineer the Uyghurs. They want the Uyghur become Han Chinese. So one of the best way to do that is to starting from children. It's much easy to make them become Han when they are so little. And we know over 500,000 Uyghurs, along with other Muslims, Turkic Muslims, are enslaved, working as a slave labor in cotton fields, factories, This is according to the documented reports that we have the concrete references. But we believe the number must be far higher than that. And if you're following about what is happening to Uyghur people, yesterday a report was published. It's called the Uyghur, an examination of China's breach of the 1948 Genocide Convention. So this report is independent expert application of the 1948 Genocide Convention to the ongoing treatment of the Uyghurs. And it was undertaken by New Lines Institute for Strategic and Policy. And the findings was that China is in breach of Genocide Convention under the international law. So every fact of the convention that is all breached. This is a analysis, through the analysis. And about 1 month ago, Essex Court Chamber, the legal expert, also published the independent opinion report, and the finding says incredible case of genocide and crime against humanity. And who are suffering the most? Women. Women are the subject of mass sterilization, forced abortion, forced IUD insertion, and women suffering from mass rape in camps. Not limited to camps, the Chinese government in 2018, the Becoming Family program, they deployed more than 1 million Han Chinese cadres, mainly male, live with the Uyghur family at least 5 days a month. And most of these families, the adults already taken to camps, no male in the house. So that gives the Chinese officials kind of green light to do what they want. So this is the maybe in 21st century another Holocaust that is happening. That is how serious the situation is. I left my country in 2000 after witnessing 1997 Guljar massacre, a peaceful demonstration against a religious crackdown, 3 months religious crackdown, arresting many young Uyghur clerics, that on the 5th of February 1997, young people in Guljar took to the street, protested peacefully, and that was crushed by military, killing over 100 on the day, then followed by mass arrests. Amnesty International documented in 1999 that 195 execution because of that peaceful demonstration. So the situation was already really worsening. It was really difficult, and that's why I decided to leave my country in 2000. I was a teacher in a college, teaching chemistry and English. My background is chemical engineering, petrochemical engineering degree. And since I left my country, became every year was worsening in the end from the 2016, since the internment camps, the concentration camps started to operate, and the mass internment of Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities. And that is a situation. Regarding how I became an activist, in fact, the earliest activity that I have involved was 1989 Tiananmen student democratic movement. I was one of the very few ethnic minority students among the mass thousands and hundreds of Chinese students protesting and hoping, asking for change, democratic change. And the very first experience and the more deeper understanding about the CCP regime through that movement, the June 4th massacre. I left the square on the 2nd of June, but I was lucky that because of the sheer number of students involved in this protest, so I was left alone. But I know many thousands of students still suffering because they have involved in that protest. So activism, I believe, is not, no one can teach you. It's come from you, come from your own conscience. When you see something wrong, you have to make that decision, whether you choose the convenience to stay in your comfort zone or you choose the right thing, to do the right thing when everyone else is scared or too concerned or too worried about own safety and other things. So that is the way that I can explain that since the day I came here, I have been speaking, trying to find every way to tell the world, tell the people that I am Uyghur, I am a Muslim, and the Chinese government is persecuting since the occupation in 1949. And now a genocide is happening and the Uyghurs are suffering, and we need people, we need the global outrage. And I expected more Muslim outrage, but sadly, up until now, we haven't seen that globally yet. And therefore, I've been trying to reach out to from the beginning when I started the campaign. I started with the reaching out to Muslim communities, mosques, MCB, Muslim Aid, all. So what you can do, what can people do, is join the campaign, Stop Uyghur Genocide campaign. That's the #1. And easiest thing, you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, or other social media. You can just retweet and learn more about the situation. In order for you to take action, first of all, you need to educate yourself to understand about what is happening. And we have many campaigns that is happening at the moment. Genocide amendment to the trade bill. It will be voted on the 22nd of this month in the Commons. If you are following the campaign, you might know this will be the 3rd round. So we need, especially if your MPs are Conservative MP, we would like you to reach out to them, write to them, or ask for a meeting and vote for this, because we need a day in court. This is the number one thing that I would ask people to do. #2 is the economic boycott, because everything what China is doing because of its economic power, and we know it's not a secret anymore that China is using Uyghurs as slave labor, and the slave labor is so widespread in all supply chains. So I would ask you to consider, especially women. We buy more stuff, we spend more money on clothes and everything. We need to look at the label and try to boycott, especially boycott the cotton goods. 84% cotton from China come from the Uyghur region. 20% of the world cotton come from the Uyghur region of East Turkestan. So therefore, there are many other things. I can share the list. And so I should stop here, otherwise I will take all the time. Thank you.
to have to sort of interrupt you, but thank you so much for that very brief overview. And it can't be easy. I mean, it's heartbreaking just listening to you speak about the genocide and speak about the oppression that, you know, you're going through and that your people are going through. Rahima, I just wanted to touch slightly. I mean, you can put in the chat a little bit later after you finish talking, you know, links to anything that you'd like people to kind of support you on. And I'd really recommend everybody sort of does the things that you've mentioned. But I just slightly, I wanted to ask you on a slightly different note. You mentioned in your bio, I read that you're a singer, and I'm just intrigued by that. And I was wondering if you could just take a couple of moments just to talk to us a little bit about your singing. Is that something that you use to, I don't know, as a relief from the, you know, amazing and hard work that you're doing constantly?
Thank you very much. That really brightened up this. Anytime when people ask about the culture, poetry or music, it really just gives me a kind of joyous happiness. Straight away, my face would change, because the music, I come from a musical family, born in the kind of family. My mother, from my great-great-grandparents, fathers and mother, they all very well-known musicians. And so that talent come from the gene. And music is part of my life, is very important part of my life. And it is helping me greatly. It's serving the course. I mean, when I set up the London Uyghur Ensemble in 2004 with some musicians, we performed in many events within the UK, in Europe, as far as in Taiwan and other countries. The main focus was to show the world the culture, the beauty of poetry, and the people. It's not just a persecuted minority. These Uyghurs are the people that has 4,000 years of history with very beautiful literature, songs, musics, and culture. We are Turkic. The Turks come from the Central Asia. They consider the Uyghurs are the ancestors of the Turks. So the music itself, especially in this very, very difficult time, anytime when I love my own folk songs that come from the Gulja region, it takes me back to the orchards and the rivers and the lakes and the mountains and hills, because that is the way that I live my life. When I sing, I actually, in my own fantasy and imagination, I live that life, and also give me, my memory comes back that from very young age, when I had my uncles, my aunties, and other families, whenever we gathered, we have abundance of musicians there, you know, and performed and sang songs. And a lot of Uyghur songs actually is a very sad, but that sadness actually, it's a way of that releasing the pain, a way of releasing the pain through songs and music. Thank you. So hopefully when this lockdown ends, hopefully we can have a good concert. But even the Women's Day, I sang one song without music. It's about women.
Oh wow!
This song was specifically written for the Women's Day. And, you know, I posted, so, you know, even without music, still wanted to share the musical part of me. Thank you.
But thank you so much. I mean, it sounds amazing and beautiful and wonderful. And, you know, I pray that one day you'll be able to go back and sort of, you know, relive those moments, you know, physically. Thank you so much, Rahima. Julie, I want to come to you. So, you know, I've known you for a good number of years, and you have always been brilliant at being an activist and choosing to challenge. And so I wanted to ask you, how do you choose to challenge the status quo in Muslim communities as a Muslim woman?
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Before I answer, I just want to take my hat off to Rahima and acknowledge your bravery and courage for so long. As you very rightly said, most of us have not been brave enough, and you have consistently spoken and raised awareness, and I really have so much admiration for how you've done that. And I remember, and linked to what you've just said, Akila, I remember when Rahima and I had a conversation about not only Rahima not being properly supported by Muslim communities, but actually when people would challenge her on who she had chosen to work with. I remember when I heard it, I literally cried out of frustration because I thought to myself, who are you to challenge her on her story that she knows better than any of us put together? And for someone to then say to her, don't work with this group, don't work with that community, don't work with the Jews, don't work with the Muslims over here, don't work, anyway, so I just wanted to kind of air that because it just reminded me, and just acknowledge really Rahima's bravery, because it really does, it's very, very inspiring to me. Anyway, so yeah, look, I mean, I love working in the Muslim communities, but it can be incredibly frustrating as well. I've been doing it a long time, and I think the most important thing for me, and I guess for all of us, is to always be rechecking our intentions or why we're doing something. Every now and again, realigning, what am I good at? What do I need to do? Where can I be most effective? And so I love it. I love working with people. I love working with, and all sorts of different issues. But there is no doubt that, we have issues specifically in our communities that have to be challenged as well, whether that be lack of leadership in certain spaces, whether it be the fact that about 1/3 of mosques in Britain don't even have a space for women to pray, whether it be what feels like a growing issue around domestic abuse, of course, across the board, but we have specific issues within the Muslim communities on these things. And so, of course, anybody will know that when you try and challenge stuff within your own community, you will get a mixture of responses, and it can be very difficult. And I think it's just important. We have to then focus on getting good people around us to feel the support, because otherwise it can be very, very difficult. I've chosen to keep away from feeding. So where there are trolls or where there are people who are trying to sort of accuse me of certain things, I just stay away from it, and I just try and focus as best as I can on what I'm doing. And I just want to give you a couple of examples to illustrate the kind of thing I've seen over the last few years, and how I've tried to navigate it. Not always, it's not always easy. So I remember, linked with Hope Not Hate, who I have a huge amount of respect for, Gemma and Nick and the others that are there, and have worked with them actually for a very long time. And I remember Nick and I did some specific work around the grooming, so child sexual exploitation, and really trying to navigate what is a very difficult topic. Because of course, on the one hand, there is, and was, and still is, a kind of far right narrative to say all Muslims are paedophiles, or all Muslims are rapists, or whatever horrible kind of narrative they've used to whip up, anti-Muslim sentiment. But on the other hand, there are issues. There are families and girls coming forward to say, look, I live in X place, and this is what I've been seeing for many years, and all of the men that I see doing this are from a certain background. So it's a very difficult space to navigate. And I remember Nick and I went to Bradford to do a launch of a kind of community awareness event. And we chose Bradford quite specifically because some of the conversations that we'd been hearing and having with people were from that part of the world. And we did a lot of preparation for it and speaking to people on the ground. The night before the event, where we had lots of press coming and all of that, I started to receive phone calls from Muslims in Bradford, who I had known for many years, in some cases, who I respected, telling me that I am bringing shame on the Muslim community of Bradford for talking about these issues and telling me to pull the plug on the event and to not go ahead with it. It's very, very hard when something like that happens, especially from people that you thought you knew and that you thought would be on your side. So we carried on anyway, and it was, you know, the work carried on. But those kind of things become very difficult. And I remember another example working with Nisan Hashim, the Jewish and Muslim Women's Network, which I'm very proud of. And we have local groups all over the country. When we were launching the Manchester group, the Manchester Muslim co-chair had booked a venue, all very innocent. She had no idea that anything was about to happen. Booked a venue, nice venue, a Muslim-owned venue in Manchester. A few days before, she phoned me up, completely flustered and upset, to say that there had been a Muslim kind of campaign where some people, a small group, but very loud, had bombarded the centre and had given the centre's number out to people to say, call the centre and tell them they must not go ahead with this event because these are Muslims working with the Zionist state of Israel, that kind of stuff. And a very big kind of smear campaign against me, against Laura, who I was working with, and against, you know, anyone who had what they saw as the nerve to work with the Jewish community at all. Thankfully, in that particular case, the institution knew me anyway, and also did what they should have done, did the checks, realized it was complete nonsense. This work had to happen. It's the kind of work they support anyway. The event went ahead. Thank God it was fine. But when you're challenged like that on those kinds of things, it can be very difficult. And of course, as I mentioned earlier with the Bradford example, you're talking about sometimes very difficult issues that people struggle to speak about. And of course, we all know in any community, when you are doing what people see as airing your linen in public, people just rather keep quiet. It's embarrassing, it's awkward. And for many Muslims, of course, being very aware of the fact that there are actual real anti-Muslim sentiments out there, if we start talking about our own stuff on our own doorstep, people feel that it's feeding that narrative, which is already very bad anyway. People will think, look, people don't like us already. Don't start talking about the difficult stuff. Keep quiet about the mosques, keep quiet about, let's deal with it internally. Well, of course, the problem with that, it doesn't happen. It never happens. Those conversations are not happening. The change is not happening. So I think it just requires people to really be focused. And for Muslims, the most important thing is to set our intentions. If we know that what we are doing, we think we're doing the right thing, in the end, God knows everything. So it doesn't matter what noise there is, how many people try and stop you from doing things. Stick to what you think is important. Get good people around you and just carry on. Bismillah. That's how I've tried to do it. I'm not saying it's always easy. There are lots of bumps in the road. There are horrible people out there, Muslims and others, trying to stop you from doing what you think is the right thing. But in the end, you just have to be brave, keep your intentions clear and focus that way and not look too far back that way.
Thanks so much, Julie. You know, I think International Women's Day is all about celebrating women, but we can't do that without allowing women to speak about the challenges they face. And you've been working, you know, so hard for, you know, more than 20 years, really trying to raise the voices of Muslim women, you know, and I know I look up to you and look up to, you know, Rahima and women like yourselves to learn how I can raise my voice. And I'm so glad that we've had the opportunity to hear from you, and thank you for everything that you do.
No, thank you. Thank you, Akila.
You know, it's so important, and I know sometimes it's not easy listening, sometimes it's uncomfortable listening for people, but it's so incredibly important. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Akila, you're muted. Sorry.
I'm so sorry. I'm not winning with the technology today, am I? So I muted myself and then started talking. So anyway, Safa, I want to come to you now, and I'm really keen to ask you about your experiences of being a young British Pakistani Muslim woman. Safa, I think you might be muted as well. No, I can't hear you now. I don't know if it will help if you disconnect your headphones or something. I had to disconnect mine earlier because of all the interference that it was causing. Shall I come back to you, Safa, while you sort that out? I'll do that. I'll go and speak to Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today. You're another woman that I have admired, albeit a little bit from afar. And I was wondering if you could, tell us a little bit about the work that you do, because I know you do really important work, especially around helping women and empower them when they're faced with really difficult situations.
Thank you, Akila. Thank you. Firstly, thank you for inviting me today. It's a privilege and an absolute honour to be on this panel with all these remarkable and astounding women. We've heard from half the panel already, and I'm already in awe about all the things that women are doing out there, and what I'm doing seems small in comparison to these big challenges, but nonetheless. I am a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for over 20 years. I know I don't look that old, but the hair dye really works sometimes. I specialise in family legal services, and we have offices in Yorkshire and London. The communities that we are sort of working with and around are, I'm from Bradford, and the Muslim community around us has issues unique to it that other communities don't have in terms of family law and the services they require. So as well as representing and advising women and men in relation to divorce, children's arrangements, Islamic divorce sometimes, the finances that arise, and their general legal rights in this country, we have the added dynamic of the cultural and religious issues that sort of intertwine with all of that. So the patriarchal, setup in many of the homes, the in-laws' contribution in the sort of household setups that we have, and the overall lok kya kenge, which translated means, what will people say if we, like Julie said, air our laundry in public? All those have an impact upon, how women or members of the Muslim community approach, difficult issues in a family dynamic. So we've been obviously providing these legal services for quite a number of years, but more recently we have seen more requests for services that we feel that are not culturally appropriate for people in the Muslim community. So one of my challenges going forward is my main challenge is to make legal services more accessible to all, in particular women, and that's where the empowerment bit comes in terms of getting them aware of what their legal rights are in this country. A lot of our clients will come to us because they'll say, well, we went to a law firm because we had a problem in our marriage. However, they just didn't get it. They didn't get the issues we were facing in a Muslim household, the extra dynamics that we were having to deal with. And let's face it, the clients that we have are at an extremely emotional time, but having to make very logical decisions. So you really need to understand what they are facing and going through to be able to advise them correctly. So that is one of our challenges. To that end, what we are trying to do is raise a lot of awareness. So legal marriages is a big one for us. Honestly, not a day goes by, probably several times a day, we get a phone call from individuals saying, can you tell me if my marriage is legal? Now, as a trainee, and this is over 20 years ago, I had this question coming up. With so much awareness, you'll have heard of the Register Our Marriage campaign. With so much work being done, we are still being asked that question, is my marriage legal? And it's all around whether the Islamic marriage, the nikah marriage that they go through in this country, whether that carries the same rights on separation and divorce as the English marriage. And so we are constantly having to deal with mainly women in that situation who realize that if they have a nikah in this country, it is not legally recognized. So on divorce, those same rights that are afforded to those with legal marriages are not afforded to those who just have a nikah. And some of the examples I can give you are just awful. You'll have women who have given and contributed to a marriage of 20, 25 years, only to be told on divorce that actually it was a nikah only, and you have very little, if any, legal rights arising out of that. If you had a legal marriage, you would have access to pension sharing orders, property sale orders, children's orders, a whole host and array of legal rights that would assist you financially going forward after a marriage breaks down. But sadly, that is not afforded to the vulnerable party, mainly being women who are not aware going into a nikah marriage what the consequences are. So we are constantly striving, and there's an article on our website which we direct a lot of people to say, please read this about your nikah marriage. And we're not saying don't have a nikah marriage, we're saying make sure you are completely informed before you enter into a nikah only marriage, okay? So you are aware of the consequences. More recently, I'm doing a lot of work around the actual nikah contract itself. We, Akhila, are far behind other Islamic countries like Pakistan, who are really working on tightening up the marriage contract. I mean, Islamically, I in my job every day, I'll look at so many marriage contracts, whether they are English marriage contracts or the nikah contract itself, because we also advise individuals on Islamic divorces. And it surprises me the reduction in the amount of clauses that are now being bandied about as a nikah contract, a nikah nama. My own marriage 31 years ago had basically my name, my husband's name, the witnesses, and the imam's name, and the meher, which is the gift on marriage, and that's all. Whereas a contract Islamically can contain up to 25 clauses. And some of these clauses, Akhila, I want to use this platform to draw attention to the fact that unbeknown to parties, or usually the woman, you know, if I can be bold enough to say, is unaware that a lot of the clauses that are there Islamically to protect her are taken out before the contract is signed. And I asked a religious scholar about this recently, and he said the reason being is that some of the imams and scholars that are dealing with these marriages don't want to ask those difficult questions of the family. For example, there is one clause. It's actually the nikah nama, the marriage contract, actually acts like a prenuptial agreement. In the event of a dissolution of a marriage, what would happen? You know, what would there be any payments going forward, etc. There can be conditions put in there as well that say this is what both parties or both the couple want in the marriage going forward. Has she got a right to work? Would she permit him to have a second wife? Those clauses are removed. So they could, therefore, taking out the conditions of that marriage. So, you know, there's lots of other detail in there. There's a right, in fact, for the woman herself to ask for talaq. So without going into the whole, you know, minutiae of talaq and hulla and the consequences of both, that right is, again, removed, you know, in the nikah contract. So the work I'm trying to do at the moment is trying to make women aware. You're entering into nikah, you're entering into an Islamic marriage. A lot of time is spent on the balloons, the wedding cake, the makeup, the hair. How much thought is being given to the actual contract of marriage that you're entering into? Marriage is by far one of the most hardest things we will ever do in our life, if we do. How much thought is being given to what that marriage will look like? What will happen if it goes wrong? What will happen if something impacts the marriage? How will you deal with that? Islamically, we have that power in that contract, but we are not utilizing it to its full effect. So as well as every day having a list of clients and attending court and going through that, a lot of my work is spent empowering women to just be aware of their legal rights, because you have them. You have them under English law, you actually have even more under Islamic law. So be aware of them and make an informed decision about what you're entering into. My work just isn't about picking up the pieces after a marriage dissolves. My work, as I see it, and Julie mentioned this earlier, that what is your, I would call it a just cause. What would you do? What is bigger than you that you are going to be doing in this life that will carry on without you? What legacy are you creating? What circle are we creating? And mine is to ensure that women are aware of their legal rights and utilize those to empower themselves. And that work is an ongoing thing for me.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I mean, that is just amazing to hear about the sort of the extent and the breadth of rights that actually women have in this country, but we're not enjoying. And to hear that actually in some places in the Muslim communities, people are scaling down those rights and those sort of God-given rights, if you like, compared to other countries like Pakistan. And you know, actually, I'm quite shocked by that. But thank you so much, and thank you for everything that you're doing to educate people. I think it's so important. And really critical, and really, you know, a brilliant example of how, you know, somebody can choose to challenge, you know, in keeping with the theme of International Women's Day. So thanks so much, Sarah. Really educational. I learned stuff just listening to you just now, and I've been married for 20 years, so really helpful. Safa, is your mic working? Can I come to you now?
Oh,
Yes, I think I can hear you now.
oh, is it working?
Yes, brilliant.
Okay, that's good. Everything's on Zoom now. But so
Thank you so much for joining us. And just to remind you, my question was really to ask you about your experiences of being a young British Pakistani Muslim woman.
Thank you. Before I start, I just wanted to say I'm so grateful that I get to be on such an incredible platform. Like listening to Julie and listening to Sarah and Rahima, like it just, there's so much that I'm passionate about, and I'm only 16, and that phrase, I'm only 16, there's so much I can do at 16, and just to listen to you talk really has been so inspiring. And I know personally I've read about the Uyghur, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. I've read about the Uyghur genocide, and I do have many Muslim friends, and we do try our best to educate ourselves and sign the petitions in whatever capacity we have. So to answer your question, Akila, I wanted to begin with representation. I was, as a child, when I was around primary school, I got involved in a lot of sort of artsy activity. So I was involved in like singing, and I really had a passion for that sort of field. Not to go in professionally, but it was something I just really enjoyed. And growing up, not only within that sort of musical industry, but just watching people on TV, there was no one like me. I didn't see any Muslims, I didn't see any people of color, and it was just it kind of, it gave me sort of that mentality of like I can't do it because I'm like, they're not like me, it's not a place for someone like me. And obviously, like now I've grown up, alhamdulillah, I'm really grateful that I've been able to educate myself, and I've learned that that isn't the case. We have young Muslim girls all around the world who don't have people who they can look up to. And you know, we have such incredible examples in the Quran. One of my favorites personally is Khadija, the wife of the Prophet, and she broke stereotypes enormously. She was a female entrepreneur. She was divorced and she remarried. She was the one who proposed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she didn't doubt her self-worth. She didn't doubt her value, and she went and she had the courage to just go and say, like, go and propose. And I think there are so many sort of norms and stereotypes that we have in today's society, and rightly so. We have so many different cultures, so many different ideologies. We have a Western history and other cultural backgrounds that have had cultures that have unfortunately been have had male dominating women. But just to have such powerful figures like Khadija and of course modern examples, I think that's just quite incredible to have. I think also another example that I wanted to touch upon was going into the idea of stereotypes. I think when you assume a Muslim has to look a certain way, whether that be a South Asian, Somali or Arab woman who wears a hijab, who has an accent and is always with her children. That's a stereotype that's been embedded into every aspect of our society. I've spoken to girls my age, and one of them said, it really frustrates me that people don't believe me when I tell them I'm Muslim, because she doesn't fit that stereotype. And I know for me that question of, oh, but what are you really? Oh, you're a Muslim. And every time I say I'm a Muslim, I feel like there's that invisible question. I need to explain sort of parts of my religion because of all these stereotypes that people have associated with us. Like a woman wearing hijab, women have been labeled oppressed, and that could not be further from the truth. The hijab is a symbol of power. It's liberating. It really does feel liberating. And, you know, in a country, you know, I've went to different countries and I've, alhamdulillah, been able to wear it and just feel proud. I don't feel like I need to explain myself. I don't need to explain why I'm wearing it. And I feel so utterly liberated because I have control over who gets to see me. Whereas in a society that's quite westernized, you need to explain, oh yes, I'm a Muslim woman. No, we're not oppressed. This is our decision. I decided to wear the hijab. I decided to be modest. Women are not oppressed. Women have so many rights, and like we're so, alhamdulillah, we have so many rights and things going for us, but people choose not to see it. People hide away from the fact that women are not oppressed. Women have the decision to, in their marriage, they say who they want to marry and who's not. And there's that idea of equity rather than equality, which I do find really incredible. Women are so powerful, and the first woman to make a university, I believe one of the longest withstanding universities that's still operating today, is Fatima Fia. I actually wrote down her name because I didn't want to butcher it, but Fatima Al-Fihri. She made the first university. She founded it with her father's inheritance money. Again, she created this incredible legacy, an institution that's continuously evolving and educating young Muslims around the world and non-Muslims in Morocco. And it's just so incredible to see that, you know, we've done so much in the world. Khadija was an incredible entrepreneur. She was so powerful. She didn't doubt herself. Fatima Al-Fihri was the first one to open an incredible educational institution that still runs till this day. Yet we're still being labeled with all these completely false stereotypes. And I think that is one massive challenge, definitely, I think, for me. And I think one way to sort of combat it is representation. We have so many incredible representatives sort of uprising with this whole social media development. Like, alhamdulillah, I'm really grateful. You know, we have Iman Sia, who was a hijabi Muslim woman who was on Britain's Got Talent and sang, and that she made that the decision to do that. We have Layla Afsad, who is the author of Me and White Supremacy, and she made like an anti-racist educational workbook and for people to just read through. And there are so many powerful Muslim women. Mashal Hussain, who's a BBC News reporter. We don't know these names. We're not educated of these names. I'm in school and I learn about history. I learn about kings, queens. I learn about all the bad things and the things that make this country look amazing. But what I'm failing to understand is that why am I not being taught about the Uyghur genocide? Why am I not being taught about my history? Why do I not know that there was Fatima, there was Khadija? Why do I not know of these things? And why do I need to put it upon myself? Why do parents have to put it upon themselves to go and educate send their children that extra mile to educate them in separate mosque schools? So I really hope that, you know, with this incredible panel and with sort of the developments that are taking place, because change is everlasting. I'm very lucky to be a part of this generation. Inshallah, I just really hope that we can sort of just change and really build a better future for Muslim women.
Thanks so much, Safa, and thank you so much for your really powerful and inspiring words. I'm quite an optimistic person, but after listening to you, I am so hopeful that we will see this change. You know, at first when you were talking, I kind of felt sad that actually when I was 16, I was thinking sort of similar things, you know, about representation and not seeing role models. But after hearing you, I'm so hopeful that actually by the time you're my age, you know, things will be changed, and they are changing. You know, you mentioned so many brilliant examples, contemporary ones, of Muslim women doing amazing things, and they're known for what they're doing, not just because they're Muslim or, you know, whatever kind of stereotypes been attached to them. So, you know, I'm really, really hopeful, and I can see so many amazing things in your future, inshallah. And, you know, thank you so much for speaking to us today. It's been really privileged. I think sometimes we forget to listen to amazing young women like yourself. So, you know, you've done really well. You've done brilliantly. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, not at all. Gemma, I'm going to come to you, please. You're our last speaker on the panel. And, you know, I'm so glad that you could join us today. And thank you so much for, you know, partnering with us on this event. And you've been a huge and incredible ally, Gemma. And I think, you know, everybody would agree with me, to the Muslim communities, but to, you know, interfaith communities. And Hope Not Hate has consistently always, you know, raised some of the issues that, you know, the disparities that British Muslims are facing. But, you know, I wanted to ask you, you know, what are the challenges that you see of representing a diverse faith while being yourself as an individual?
Thanks, Akina, and thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure for Hope Not Hate to be partnering with the Anti-Muslim Hatred Working Group on this seminar, and feeling a little bit overawed because every single speaker, one after the other, you've all been brilliant. So thank you for including me. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because what we have, you know, is a situation where we come in to represent a group, and we have that kind of challenge between knowing that people are coming with preconceived ideas about our faith or our background, and we have this kind of short window where we want, you know, should we smash the stereotypes? Should we get straight into the things we, you know, think that they might be thinking about us? Or do we focus on who I am and what I bring, and, you know, the job I've come to do, to whether it's, you know, in whatever situation we're put in, I'm there to do something, to accomplish something. So do I just be me and park the fact that people are going to have these stereotypes, or do I try and address the stereotypes? And obviously it's all a question of how much time you have, how much comfort you feel in the space you're in. I mean, I think we, you know, one of the first things we learn when we start learning how to do better interfaith is to always speak with the I, you know, that I am a particular type of Jewish woman. I don't represent every single Jewish woman out there. The things, the way I choose to dress, the food I choose to eat, the way I choose to educate my children, those are my personal decisions. I do include my husband in how I educate the children, just in case you're wondering. It's a joint decision. But you know, that's me as an individual. And yet I know that when I speak and people say, well, here's Gemma Levine and she's a Jewish woman, or she's an Orthodox Jewish woman, or she's a strictly Orthodox Jewish woman, that comes with a whole bunch of stereotypes. And that kind of, it's a real challenge. Do we unpick? Do we go in there with a sledgehammer and go, no, you've got me wrong, or you've got my community or my community's wrong? Or do we just, you know, prove by being good at what we're doing that's where our value is? And actually, you know, my value as an individual is my personality and my talents and my, you know, intelligence that I bring. And, you know, do I put it on you to just get over what misconceptions you might have brought? And I think it's always a really difficult challenge, and it's very, very tiring. I think that's the thing we don't talk about, is that especially if we're the only person of a committed faith in a setting, it can be really, really exhausting to bring that extra challenge and that awareness of how you're being seen to the table. And that makes, you know, engaging in spaces where you don't feel so comfortable really, really tiring and very, very emotional in a way that a lot of people don't have that kind of baggage that they're kind of bringing in, or that kind of extra complexity that they're bringing into a situation. I think one final thing that I'd add to this is that there's also a responsibility that we have, is that, you know, both Muslim and Jewish women struggle in certain spaces in terms of representation, and we have a responsibility to widen that and to increase the diversity. You know, am I the right person? I'm not scared to say, actually, I know somebody who's better. If somebody asks me to speak at something because they happen to know me, I need to self-reflect. Am I the best person for what's being asked to be spoken about? Or might there be somebody I could introduce to this person who can widen things out, make things more diverse? We talk about letting down the ladder, but it's not just about letting down the ladder and making the next generation, but also just thinking about, it doesn't always have to be me. There's so many talented people in my community, or in the interfaith world, and let's keep opening those doors for each other.
Thanks so much, Gemma. And that's a really important point about passing the mic, or lifting the ladder, as you say. And, you know, as I said, you've been an incredible ally. to not only Muslim community but all communities, and it's just, yeah, it's really amazing to know you and learn from you. So I just wanted to let everybody know that you can ask questions for our panelists, so please do post them on the chat, and while some questions are hopefully going to come through, I want to go round to each of the panelists and just ask you about an inspirational Muslim woman who you want to recognize and mention. So I thought I would go first. Actually, no, I won't go first. I think I'll come to Roxana, if I may. Roxana, if I could come to you, actually, because I did want to ask you a question. I know we discussed this and we said, you know, you might not sort of speak, but actually I think we've got some time. So Roxana, if I could first of all just ask you about a Muslim woman who you'd like to celebrate or mention, but also if you could just touch on some of the sort of research that you've been doing, looking at kind of positive stories amongst communities, you know, since the time of COVID.
Sure. Akila, you're going to hate me for this, so apologies in advance. Yeah, I think I'd like to take this space to really show my gratitude to you. I've worked alongside you for a year now, and it's been such an incredible experience, honestly. For anyone who thinks that Muslim women aren't strong, they just need to spend a day with Akila, because, you know, I've learned so much from you, and I watch you lead the other independent members with, you know, you're so good. And I think when you occupy spaces such as you do, and so many of the other women on this panel, a lot of the work goes unappreciated. So yeah, I'd just like to take this space to kind of pass on my gratitude to you and everyone else on this panel for turning up and sharing with us your experiences and your knowledge. It's a really important thing we can do, is to praise Muslim women, but, you know, women at large as well. So that's that. Sorry if I embarrassed you, Akila, but I had to do it. Yeah, and in regards to some of the research that I've been doing, so since COVID-19 kind of took its hold on society, we did lots of research looking at the impacts of COVID-19 on Islamophobia and anti-Muslim hatred, which felt really important. But on the other side, it was a really, really beautiful moment where communities came together. You know, the Muslim community really kind of stepped up to the plate to help wider society. And I think, you know, there's those tropes about Muslims that they kind of live in ethnic enclaves and they don't really socialize with wider society. I think it really just, I don't know what the phrase is, you know, turned that trope on its head, because we were seeing time and time again how the Muslim community were turning up, you know, whether it's feeding the homeless or opening up mosques for to give COVID tests and stuff, you know. So it's been a really amazing thing to kind of deep dive into. So I will share some of our research on the chat now, but yeah, I think that's it from me, and thank you for everyone for coming up. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Roxana, and you did embarrass me, and I'll speak to you about that afterwards. So I'm just joking. So basically, just to go around kind of the panel. So Rahima, you know, can I come to you? Who inspires you?
First of all, the first person who inspired me was my mother. And she is the best example in all my life, throughout my life, from childhood. And from her music, optimism, and never give up, give in, or complain. I remember one word often, when I am extremely tired, and I remember she often said, "Thank God created night, otherwise I wouldn't have time to sit to lie down." Yeah, and another person who really inspired me with my work and the bravery and all is the Soyun-Gul Chanchef, is the book that I have translated. The author, I'd like to show you. I would also recommend you to read this book if you want to know more about the Uyghur situation, The Land Drenched in Tears. So it took me 4 years to translate this book with my free time. And Twinkle Chanashif, she lives in Australia. She's in her 80s now. And she was arrested at Medical University, Xinjiang Medical University, after setting up East Turkestan People's Party with her other classmates. And she had suffered all her youth up until she left China in 1980. So about 20 years in hell. But if you read the book, it's not about hell, it's about her optimism and about how she was still trying to help others, the elderly, other class enemies, while she was treated and tortured so badly. But she often also the belief in God. She often said, this is just a temporary. And that something helped her to stay focused and stay, still being able to physically and psychologically being normal throughout her ordeal during 20 years of hell. And she inspires me. Yeah, even during my fight and my cancer, during the time that I had chemotherapy, I know I was in a really terrible situation. I often just thought about her. Then I feel that, this is nothing compared to what she had gone through. So I think it is important to have some kind of figure that, you can always compare yourself, and then you don't moan. You feel embarrassed to moan about the little things. So yes,
Amazing.
I recommend you to read this book, and then you will forget all of your own trouble.
We will do. No, brilliant. Thank you so much. And Salma has also mentioned her mother on the chat as well. So, and I want to acknowledge my mother as well. So thank you so much, Rahima. Julie, can I come to you? Who inspires you?
So as people have said, lots of people come to my mind, but the one that I want to mention is a young woman called Fatima, who is 24, who I've met only in the last few months, has really, she went through her own domestic abuse journey, even though she's only 24, into a marriage, was treated very badly, came out, and is now using her own experience, while also still obviously, of course, on her own journey still, to support others. And, I have to keep reminding myself when I'm working with her and coming up with all these ideas of what we can do and all of that, that actually she's on her own journey, still very recent, her own situation. So I really have benefited from knowing her, even just in the last few months. Articulate, clever, but very sincere, and just wants to help other young Muslim women. And so in the theme of this Choose to Challenge, that's really what she's doing, and encouraging other people so that we don't continue to see these cycles carry on. So I wanted to give a shout out to Fatima, my new heroine in my life from the last few months.
Fatima sounds amazing, and really wish her all the best. Sarah, can I come to you and ask you, who inspires you?
It's a difficult one, that, Akila, because I never fail to get inspired by every single woman I meet, whether it's on this panel and the work that you're all doing, whether it's a client of mine and what they've been through. So many women are, doing so much. And I don't just mean working the job they do if they choose to have a career, but then, managing the household, raising the children to be good people. I'm always inspired, and I will never fail to find inspiration from each and every woman I meet. But if you want a simple answer, then again, I have to mention my mom, who at 75, doesn't let anything stop her. You know, she's an inspiration to other women of her generation in that. Ruxana was mentioning the pandemic and how we've had to change how we're doing things. You know, their classes that they used to do in the mosque to sort of learn more about the Quran and the teachings behind it. They switched to Zoom and to Teams, and, you know, Mum was at the front of that, trying to show all these other old ladies how to manage Zoom and Teams, and, you know, and how to keep score of what they're doing on little games they play together, just to keep that interaction going. And, you know, I just thought, you know, if you know, all women have ambitions and dreams, and it's just about giving them the opportunity to realize that it's not like somebody is better at one thing or better at another. It's about the opportunity that was given to them, and others helping them up, like all the panelists have mentioned about each giving each other a hand up. And, you know, we've got to make a bit of a shout out to Safa's grandfather as well. You know, it's all very well women empowering women, but we need men to empower women too.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Safa, we've had a question that's come through for you, and the question is about, let me just check because I've lost it, but the question is basically, what do you think schools can do to increase representation? And then if you could also just mention who inspires you.
I'll start off with the first question. Thank you. I think it's really important to acknowledge that a school is an institution for children, right? We have to learn that what we learn, our primary education, we learn our secondary education, we learn about the world we live in, the country that we live in, but we need our curriculum really has to be altered, and altered is an understatement. We have to start a better curriculum. We have to educate children on issues that, or, you know, like the Uyghur situation, and in like, we need to learn history that supports our own cultural backgrounds. And I think a way that we can do this is by revising our history curriculums, looking into which exam boards like give you which exam boards provide you with different resources, and if they don't support what you wish to educate your students on, then either see if you can reach out to the exam board and see what they can accommodate for you, or if that's not an option, then there's not a limit there. We have life studies lessons, we have PSHE lessons, we have lessons that adjust with our class, and even if it's a 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes 5 times a week adds up, and that, for all we know, that 15 minutes could educate a student on something so incredible, something that they wouldn't even know. It's these small, whether it be embedded in our historical curriculum, whether it be embedded in our 15 minutes to an hour of our school, we need to educate children. We need to teach them that this is happening, this is current, this is contemporary, these issues that we need to face and we need to solve, and this is our history. We've made mistakes in the past, but only by making these mistakes are we able to acknowledge what we need to do in order to be successful in the future. And I think for the second question, an inspirational woman, I've already touched upon Khadija. I think listening to incredible women on this panel as well has been really amazing. I think I'm very grateful to have incredible aunts. I think some of them are on here, so shout out to them. They've all really helped me throughout my life, and I've had an amazing cousin who's been helping me throughout everything recently. And I think someone who actually I've only met today, I find really inspirational is Rahima. Just by your work and how incredibly consistent you've been, the resilience that you've shown, I'm in awe, and I really, really hope that I can work with you in the future. But I think I just want to throw Khadija back in there. I think she is someone who was an entrepreneur, like I said before, like we know. She grew up in a place where, of course, there was culture and there was religion, like it is in all societies, but she dominated that barrier. She showed that she was a successful entrepreneur. She was very successful, one of the most successful businesswomen. She never questioned her value. She was very confident. She had her children. She had children from her previous marriage, which I think think someone mentioned it before, the log kya kenge, what are people going to say? And she broke that stereotype, this cultural bias that we have of, oh, what are people going to say? Don't wear that because what's that auntie going to say? And then what's going to happen about your marriage? I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like so many conversations end with marriage. I don't understand why that has to be a female's end goal. I don't think, I know that's not a female's end goal. We're not born to reproduce. We're not born to get married and have children. We have a purpose. We have something, we have a much greater purpose in our lives than to just get married and have children, even though that is a big part of it, which is something that, you know, works within our lives. But I'm just going back to the question. I realized I detoured a little bit. I do think she's really incredible, and it's important for young girls to remember who she is.
Thank you so much, Safa. I completely agree with you about Rahima and all the women on this panel being so inspiring. And Gemma, if I could come to you and ask you, who inspires you?
Sure. Just before we do that, I just wanted to mention one thought I had in terms of representation in schools as well, which is become a governor. Become a governor of, particularly of a school that is very white. You know, they're crying out for good governors, but they're also crying out for diverse governors, and that's something that anybody can do. And you know, if you are a school governor, then you get to influence what goes on to at least the informal curriculum like PHSE and stuff. I'm going to do a bit of a mummy brag here because I am proud. Roxy, you probably know what I'm going to say because I shared it with the team. So I was putting out the recycling last week, and I saw a letter from the House of Commons on the top of the recycling. I thought, that's odd, I haven't written to my MP recently. And it was from my son, who's in year 13, so he's 18. And he had written to our MP, who's now his MP too, about the Genocide Amendment Bill. And I said, oh, this is interesting you've done this. And he said, oh, all my friends, we all did this. So he goes to a Jewish comprehensive in Northwest London. They have in their PHSE, they do some Holocaust education, not obviously very culturally relevant. And as part of that, they had spoken about the Uyghur crisis and they had all written to their MP. Our MP is Tory MP, and he has changed his views because of letters he's received from his constituents, and he's going to vote in favour of the amendment. So, you know, what happens at school is really important. As parents or as just individuals who are in the community, we can also have a massive impact, both at home for our kids, but also on what our schools care about. And if they know that their governors and their parent bodies care about issues, we as adults kind of beyond the school system can also have a positive impact there. So to who inspires me, I had so many people pop into my head for this, but I decided to keep it to someone who I spent a huge amount of virtual time with this year. And this is my colleague, Afrida, who is our activism and operations officer at Home H. She's been with us for 2 years. Afrida Chowdhury is just, I tell you why she inspires me, because she brings her whole self to work. She is fierce for other people. So she is just I've learned so much from her about how to be an upstander and how to not just think about what concerns me and what's on my plate, but like looking around the world. She's just announced that she's actually leaving Hope Not Hate at the end of April. She's got a job Islamic Relief, because what she really wants to do career-wise is work in international development. And I'm actually gutted that she's leaving, but I'm really thrilled for her because it's a really, really good way into what she wants to do with the rest of her life. But in terms of the thing that I love about her is she is an individual. The way she is a Muslim woman is Afrida's way of being a Muslim woman. She doesn't let anybody else prescribe how she walks through her life. But the Muslim woman she is a woman who is just an advocate for making the world a better place. And for me, of what I know, the limited amount I know about Islam, that like is such a fundamental part of what the positive things that I've experienced from all the Muslim women who inspire me. So I've chosen Afrida as my incredible woman who I'm proud to call a friend as well as a colleague.
Thanks so much, Gemma. And she sounds incredible. And I just want to give a final thank you to all of our panelists, to Rahima, to Gemma, to Julie, to Safa, to Sarah, thank you so much for speaking today and joining us and sharing with us your insights and your experiences. I have learned so much, and you are all so inspiring and amazing. I want to thank all of the attendees. Thank you so much for your contributions on the chat. I'm so glad that you were able to make the time and join us to celebrate Muslim women, you know, to learn how we can all collectively choose to challenge. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm feeling really energized after listening to so many inspiring women. And I've just got so much hope for the future. So keep on doing the amazing, brilliant things that you're doing. And thank you for everything that you do. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, bye.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.